I can give you like the basic fine tuning, but we can stack life and discoverability together. I think there's more to be said about discoverability though. But yeah, basically the point, you're probably familiar with the standard formulation. There's a wide range of epistemic possibilities over the physical constraints of our universe. There's a narrow range of epistemic possibilities which are life permitting. Within that narrow range that's life permitting, there's an even narrower range that's not only life permitting, but also promotes scientific discoverability for these rational agents. And that's more expected given theism to naturalism if we just look at the facts internal to the theories.
Why would I accept that?
Wait, why would you accept what?
That's more expected under theism.
Yeah, well, it seems like you're asking me something very trivial. It seems like
Trivial?
internal. Yeah,
Give your argument. Like, what you mean is trivial? Give your argument.
I was going to give the argument. I don't know why you're doing this thing where you're interrupting already. But so it seems like internal to the theory of theism, there are some facts internal to the theory that draw out the expectation, which is the axiological motivation. We have reason to believe that this mind would be axiologically motivated if we run an analogical induction on what things we see minds typically prefer, right? Given that minds tend to be axiologically motivated, it's kind of a plausible entailment from theism that this mind would be axiologically motivated. And then if we look at what it means to be axiologically motivated, that just means they're motivated to bring about value. A universe that permits rational agents is valuable. If you don't think it's valuable, at least we think that the mind would find it valuable if we further the analogical induction. So then that's going to give us reason to unequally distribute the probabilities given theism over the epistemic possibility space, whereas under naturalism, there's no reason to do that. So then you just infer principle of indifference over naturalism. And that's why it's more accepted.
Why would I accept that any mind, just because a mind, because like a human mind has some sort of axiological motivation, that I should accept that some disembodied mind that we have no idea its properties would be the same exact type of mind that would be axiological motivated? What's the argument for that?
Yeah, I already explained this. You run an analogical induction. So an analogical induction is where...
It's a weak induction.
It's not a weak... Do you have an argument?
It's a very weak induction. What are you talking about? What's the difference? Yeah, there's differences between the mind that you're talking about and a human mind. One is that it's a disembodied mind. Two, it's not a human mind.
Wait, but to be fair, obviously when you run an analogical induction, analogical inductions allow for an asymmetry in properties, right? So
yeah, but
I don't understand why you just think that there's an asymmetry.
Let me get you like this type of induction that you're trying to do, and I'm going to try to give you an analogy to try to show you the difference in type of inductions that you're using, and showing you how to show you the inductive leap that you're doing. I'm going to show you. Okay. All right. Pretend I have a bag, right? And I say that in this bag, I pull out a blue marble, okay? And then I pull out another blue marble, and I pull out another blue marble, okay? Eventually, I can then start formulating inductive reasoning with what I'm picking out. But what I'm picking out, right, the properties of blue and the fact that it's the properties of a marble, right? Now, imagine I say, because of the fact that I pick out certain properties of this, say blue, all right? I could then say, right, I could just induct that the next thing I'll pull out is a blue frog, all right? That's obviously not going to be the case. It's an inductive leap. I have no reason to assume that I'm going to pull out a blue frog just because I pulled out 3 blue marbles.
That's not analogous because we're specifically talking about the
That's
kind
exactly
of...
analogous. What are you
Okay,
talking
notice
about?
how I just let you
Exactly-
speak for 30...
exactly
so notice how I
analogous.
let you speak for like 30 seconds uninterrupted. So can you just give me like 30 seconds to get out the concept? Like, I don't want to do this thing where we constantly interrupt each other. Are you willing to do that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so the reason why I don't think that's analogous is because we're specifically talking about the kind of entity this thing is, right? The kind of entity that this thing is a mind. We have other examples of the kinds of entities that exist also being minds now. The reason why this isn't analogous is because a frog is not the same kind of entity as a marble, right? So with an analogical induction, you want to say that there's a similarity in the kind of entities. But the second point, right, because that's why it's not analogous. The second point I want to kind of address is, you said that the reason why it's a weak induction is because there's some type of asymmetry in properties. Like, for example, you want to say a mind is going to be the type of thing which is spatially extended in humans, whereas in God it's not, right? I don't see why that's a relevant property to make the induction weak, because when you do an analogical induction, obviously it's going to allow for an asymmetry in properties, right? Like we're not saying that they share every single property the same, right? So if you have an account as to why those specific asymmetrical properties are going to make it weak, that would be appreciated. But otherwise, I don't see how you just listing out the properties that are asymmetrical would make it a weak induction, right? Because obviously it's possible to do an induction.
I'll explain the similarities. Wait, you're not done? Okay.
Yeah, obviously it's possible to do a cogent induction where the properties are asymmetrical.
Yeah. There's only one property that's the same, and that's the property of having a mind. Every other property is going to be different. So again, right? It's analogous. Hold on. It's analogous with picking out marbles and then picking out a blue frog. because they have one property in common, the same way that this embodied mind and the human mind has only one property in common. It's the fact that it has a mind. That's the only property that they have in common.
I think there's further that needs to be said about the property of having a mind. Right? Like, there are obviously sub-properties that come from that property that they would also share. So it's not true that the only property they share is having a mind, right? Presumably, embedded internal to the theistic hypothesis is also the fact that this God is a rational agent, right? If it's a rational agent, then obviously that's a second property that's shared. A third property that presumably would be shared is the capacity to have knowledge, because this God's going to be omniscient, right? So it's not just the fact that there's a mind, right? Because that's not the only thing that's
now you're adding auxiliary commitments. You're adding auxiliary commitments.
We're not adding these. These have been internal to the theory the whole time. Right? I take theism.
Omniscience is auxiliary commitments.
Included in my God concept.
You think that was those things? Hold on. Cap. Do you think that somebody who believes in a certain mind that created the universe has to hold to some omniscience?
Well, I think if they don't think it's omniscient, I don't think it's a God. Right? I take theism and God.
If you don't think it's omniscient, I'm not talking about God, right? We're just talking about something that created. We're just talking about a mind that created the universe.
Well, I don't think
you didn't even motivate. You didn't even motivate that.
Would you agree that?
Right now.
Would you agree that?
Hold on, wait, Cap.
I don't take that to be a God.
Right now, hold on, Cap. Let's say it's not a God, right? Let's say it's just a mind. Hold on. Let's say it's just a mind that created the universe, and you're saying that's not God.
Oh, well, I'm not talking about
that. You have to commit. You have to commit that the mind has to also be omniscient. That means you have to then motivate omniscience, right? You have to also motivate that.
No, I don't. Let me explain why I don't need to motivate those properties. The reason why I don't need to motivate those properties.
You do in order. You can't. That doesn't come for free with mind. That doesn't come for free with a mind.
So the reason why I don't have to motivate those properties is because we're specifically talking about.
Time out. I'm trying to get it out. Look, that doesn't come for free, right? Having a mind doesn't automatically get you omniscience. It doesn't come for free. That's a simple motivation.
Yeah, I understand. Now let me explain why I don't need to motivate those properties. We're specifically looking at the hypothesis of theism and naturalism. It's analytically true in theism, in virtue of what I take the God concept to be, that it just is going to have this property, right? So I don't need to motivate this mind having this property, because then I'm talking specifically about a God. You understand that, right?
But if you're saying, that means you're saying that based on God, based on your definition of God, that means I could accept that a mind created the universe and it not be God.
Yeah, obviously you can. I'm not denying that.
So then that means you have to motivate. In order for you to motivate God, you have now a heavier burden. Now you have to motivate.
I don't need to motivate these things. The reason why I don't need to motivate these things
it doesn't come for free. I could accept. Cap. Please listen. Okay?
Are you familiar with how these type of arguments work? Do you know what the Anthropic Principle is?
I'm trying to explain it to you. If you're going to motivate that God created the universe, and in your argument, you have to then, and you're saying that this God has to be omniscient in order to be defined as God, that means you have to motivate why I should accept that the mind that created the universe is also omniscient. Otherwise, I could accept that a mind created the universe and it not be God according to you.
Okay, I don't know why you're doing this thing where you try to overtalk me, but look, when you do a comparative analysis where you look at evidence, you want to look at whether or not the hypothesis, like the evidence confirms one hypothesis as opposed to the other. The two we're specifically talking about are theism and naturalism. Okay, so all that needs to be shown here is just that the evidence is more expected over theism as compared to naturalism. Correcto? Would you agree so far?
You know that atheism doesn't.
Do you agree?
Necessarily.
No,
I don't agree that naturalism. I don't. That's not a true dichotomy.
I didn't say it was a true dichotomy, but I just want to know: do you agree?
Why would I accept that? Yeah, but exactly, it's not either theism or naturalism. That's not. I don't agree.
I didn't say it was a dichotomy. The argument I'm specifically running
is
a type of comparative analysis between theism and naturalism. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree. Why would I agree with that?
You don't agree that my argument is a comparative analysis between theism and naturalism, even though that's literally I'm using the Bayesian likelihood principle to motivate this.
Yeah,
are you able to track?
All I'm saying, right? Like I got a few points.
I'm just asking if you agree. I don't care about anything else.
Points against you. I have a few points against
you. Do you agree that my argument is using yes or no? Do you agree, AR? Do this thing where you try to.
I don't agree that it's just naturalism versus theism. What are you talking about?
I didn't say those are the only two possible options.
I'm trying because I'm an atheist. Why would I care? Look, I'm saying that like I'm an atheist, right? You're supposed to motivate me to accept theism over atheism.
Yeah, that's
because if there's an alternative view, and there's an alternative view other than naturalism that I could hold to, and it not be God, I'm still okay. You didn't motivate me to come to theism just because you debunked naturalism.
So if there's some evidence that confirms a hypothesis, it's trivially always going to raise the probability, right? Even if it's expected under the view, it's trivially always going to raise that probability. So even if it's the case that it confirms theism over naturalism, that's still going to raise the probability of theism because the evidence is raising the probability of theism.
Yeah, but if it raises the probability of theism in some other worldview that's also atheistic, then I don't have to force myself into theism. That's the point that I'm trying to make to you.
I didn't say you have to force yourself into
Then
theism. The point is just that the evidence.
Then you don't.
Okay, the point is just that the evidence raises the probability of theism, the posterior wholesale. Right? It's always going to do
Yeah,
that.
it raises the probability of theism, but it could also raise the probability of some atheistic worldview equally. That's the point I'm trying to make to you. And especially if you hold to this whole idea of theism, and you made it worse for yourself, because now you're committed to theism being not only a mind that created the universe, a mind that is omniscient that created the universe.
I just want to flag.
A mind alone, according to you, a mind alone, hold on, a mind alone, listen, wait, a mind alone that created the universe under you isn't theism. So,
yeah, it's not
according
theism.
to you, I could hold to a mind, according to you, I could hold to this mind creating the universe, it not be a god. According to you.
Yeah.
You shot
but that
yourself in the
doesn't
foot when you
object to
said
the
that.
argument there.
Tighten your argument up, bro. Tighten your argument. Yo, bro, that's the one thing you messed up on. That's the one thing you messed up on. If you wouldn't have never said that,
just stop talking for like 5 seconds.
If you wouldn't have committed yourself,
just stop talking. I don't understand why you do this thing where you overtalk and just like ape out and freak out. The point is just that the argument functions as a comparative analysis. So all we need to show for the conclusion to follow is just that the evidence on the table is more expected under theism than naturalism.
Yeah, you're straw manning my view.
If it's expected under the view, then it's trivially going to be evidence for the view.
That's
Do you
not,
agree?
No, it's not. Because all you're supposed to. You don't think evidence is what's expected under a hypothesis? Over the negation.
This is like standard Bayesianism.
Motivate that God exists.
Evidence is what's expected under a hypothesis.
Listen, you're supposed to motivate why I should accept that God exists over any other atheistic worldview. I'm not here just because you debunked naturalism. It doesn't mean that you then therefore have to conclude that God exists. Are there any other atheistic worldview? Of course, there are people there are atheists that believe in supernatural.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But the point is just that if we have the conclusion of the argument, which is just that it's more expected under theism than naturalism, that just means my argument succeeds.
First of all, I don't even accept that either, because I already told you why I have problems with your inductive argument. I already explained that you have an inductive leap. I already
explained why it's not. You didn't give me an account as to why the asymmetry is going to serve as something that makes the induction weak. But secondly, I'm not finished speaking. You see how I let you speak, and then you do this thing where you interrupt me? Stop doing that. I don't understand. I don't want to get rhetorical with you. We need to just have a very good faith linear discussion. Now, I already explained why your analogy didn't work, right? Because we're talking about the kind of entity there, right? But your analogy was supposed to serve as some defeater, which it didn't succeed. And then you didn't give me an adequate account as to why the asymmetry there is going to somehow make the induction weak. So if we just look at who met their burden of proof in rejoinder, you actually failed to actually address the analogical induction.
Right, but that's not I actually head on combated the analogical deduction.
No, you didn't. You failed to give me an account as to how the asymmetry made the induction weak.
I could explain, and I have other points as well. Like, for example,
but you say that. No, we don't need to jump to another point. Don't try to jump to another point.
I'm going to explain it.
Right, you're not going to run, okay? I'm grabbing you by your collar right now. I'm grabbing you.
Okay.
You need to give me an account as to how the asymmetry is going to be the kind of thing which makes the induction weak.
Yeah, I got you. So again, right, the reason why we observe, for example, human beings, right, being axiologically motivated to design a certain thing, right, we see that they're also axiological motivated to design things that aren't as realistic as the universe. For example, humans could design any type of design. For example, they could design something that is fiction, non-fiction, right? So they have the scope of designing anything, including obviously what we would represent as the universe. All right.
Yeah, but so the problem there is that
obviously it's a larger scope. Obviously it's a larger scope. Listen. Obviously there's a larger scope. Listen, Cap. Obviously there's a larger scope for humans to design than there is for the universe in and of itself. Right? You have a larger scope. You have things that aren't realistic as well that people design, and things that are realistic that people design. All right. So you have a larger scope of what people design. Obviously, the universe in and of itself is going to be reflective of something that a human could design, because humans could design anything that is fiction or non-fiction. Not just nonfiction. So that's also why it's not.
The data is just that it's reflective of what a human would design. That's not even the data in question. You're terribly misreading.
So
there's obviously a disanalog. There's obviously a disanalog.
Your question is that
I'm not finished speaking. You see how I let you speak, and you're still trying to interrupt.
Yeah, I got you.
Just let me speak.
I'm trying to explain why
there's obviously a disanalog between.
Go ahead.
The reason why humans can make things that are not as realistic is obviously, it seems like that can easily be explained by some type of limit in their power, right? Whereas the reason why this isn't going to work for theism is because this God presumably is all powerful. So then obviously it would have more motivation to create more realistic things. So that's number one. And then number two is that the divine psychology thing doesn't matter, because the data in question is just one, like it has to just be one rational agent, right? Like as long as there's one rational agent that exists on the earth, then you get a finely tuned universe. right? So
Yeah,
I don't understand why talking about whether or not these things are realistic or not even
that's
matters.
not how that works. Yeah,
That is how that
that's
works.
not how that works. I'm trying to explain to you how that. I'll explain why that doesn't work.
That is how that works.
Because when you're saying that, listen, right? When you're saying that humans are axiologically motivated to design, humans design for all types of reasons. It doesn't have to invoke some sort of value in what they design. That's one. For two, even if I were to accept that humans themselves have some motivation to design something with value, how do we know that that's just a property of the mind? All right, like for example, it could just be that they have some other properties that motivate them to be axiologically motivated. That's an auxiliary commitment with the mind, not the mind itself. So how do you motivate
humans
that?
are rational, because humans have the ability to act in accordance with their desires. So then if they're axiologically motivated, they would act in accordance to those desires to make things and design them. But that's not even the point of the argument. Because we're not talking about, I'm not finished. See how you do this thing where you try to interrupt? Like, calm down. Just chill. The second thing is just that it seems like you're kind of misunderstanding the point. The data is not that there's a universe that appears designed. The data is that there's a universe with at least one rational agent in it, right? And that's enough to show that the universe is finely tuned, right? Because all fine tuning is that our universe falls within a narrow range that's life permitting. So I don't even understand why this design talk is even pertinent, right? The point just is God would have reason to bring about a world with rational agents because it's valuable. Or if you don't grant that it's valuable, we have reason to think that because minds tend to value rational agents. So then that just draws out the expectation.
Yeah, you're invoking. Now you're just giving an auxiliary commitment to the mind itself, saying that they value rational agents.
The auxiliary was motivated given the analogical induction. The analogical induction is not the same as
because the mind. You're not saying because the mind. Yeah, he is double counting as well. Yeah, but you're not saying. This is crazy because that is true. He is double counting.
The data is conditionally independent, so we're not double counting.
All you're looking at, huh? Say it again. Say it again.
The data is conditionally independent, so we're not double counting when we stack
conditionally independent. Okay, even if that is the case, right? I can still show you how, if you're going to commit to some sort of like auxiliary commitment, right? I could do the same thing in my worldview and just say that there's some sort of disposition in naturalism, or even just a sort of any atheistic worldview, where
you could that's not a plausible entailment, whereas we have reason to think it's a plausible entailment.
It's not plausible entailment.
Mm-hmm.
What's the argument for that?
Yeah, because there's nothing internal to naturalism that says that the universe would have to have this type of disposition, whereas we have reason to think that God would have this disposition, which is again the axiological motivation.
Yes, there is. There's obviously, right? Like for example, all we got to do is just that under naturalism, like if some natural tendencies tend towards a certain behavior in the universe, that
that's
hold on, where life does arise, all right, and there's at least a chance that life can arise. Given enough time, life will arise. That's how that works.
Okay, yeah. So that's just inverse gambler.
That's not inverse gambler at all.
Yo, I saw that on your video, bro.
That's called expectation. That's called expectation. Hold on, Isla, please. That's called expectation given a number of trials. Like for example,
inverse gambler. No, what do you think inverse gambler is? Obviously, the inverse gambler fallacy just wants to say that you might think given a large number of trials, something might become more probable, whereas the probability of the event occurring given the number of trials doesn't actually change. Right? That's literally just inverse gambler fallacy. What are you saying? But yeah, I think I can like head out there. It was a good discussion.
And that's about random. They're not random processes, bro. Inverse gambler.
It was a good discussion.
And that's about random. They're not random processes, bro. Inverse gambler is talking about random processes. This is false, right? So I'm talking about that naturalism actually has a tendency towards life. Okay.
You just got shit on so bad.